after 15 years of my body being very regulated, not having many changes, that felt scary to me. It felt scary to feel like I was out of control of my body. So on January 1st, I had the worst panic attack I have ever had. Hello friends, and welcome back to the SweatSimple podcast. My name is Brooks Herbis, and I'm an online fitness, nutrition, and mindset coach who's here to help you simplify and make sense out of the all too confusing fitness and nutrition industry. Let's be real, there's a lot of conflicting information online, and it can be hard to know what's legit and who to trust. In every episode, I'll be sharing the science and psychology behind health, fitness, and long-lasting behavior change. But I'll also be sharing real-life practical application, because all of the best info in the world only matters if you can actually apply it to your real life. So grab a coffee, water, glass of wine, or lace up your walking shoes, and let's dive in. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the SweatSimple podcast. I'm going to be real. This episode is going to be a little bit more free-flowing and a little bit more vulnerable than what I typically share. Based off the topic, we're talking about getting off hormonal birth control. And, I try to share a lot about my own health and fitness journey, but usually when I'm sharing these things, it's kind of things that I've already overcome. I've overcome yo-yo dieting. I've really improved my relationship with food. I've overcome a period of, trying to control my workout or my fat loss through exercise. Typically when I'm sharing, it's all things that I have overcome with my health and fitness journey, but this is something that I'm more in the middle of, but I felt it was important to, I wanted to share my experience, because from my own journey, I only saw a lot of negativity around coming off hormonal birth control. And to be frank, it scared the shit out of me and made me so anxious to get off of birth control. So I just wanted to share my own perspective and hopefully give some of you all hope that it doesn't have to be this negative thing. And you know what? I did actually hear positive experience from friends and stuff, but from health and fitness influencers, from other coaches, I only ever saw a negative experience. And I just wanted to get this out there that doesn't have to be the case. And I do really want to give the caveat, this is super important, that this is not my specialty as a health and fitness coach. I am not an endocrinologist. I am not a functional health coach. I would say because I am a health and fitness coach, I have a higher than normal person knowledge base around hormones. I know how different macro and micronutrients affect our hormones, obviously how sleep and exercise play a role, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I am not ordering labs for my clients and creating nutrition and supplement protocols for them. That is not my specialty. If you want someone who's going to help you eat for real life, think about food less, lose fat, get strong, improve your relationship with food, I am your girl. Come hit me up. But if you want someone to help you overcome a hormone issue or specifically create some sort of protocol for you to get you off hormonal birth control, that is not my specialty. And I say that because I want you to know that during this podcast episode, I am truly just sharing my experience, what worked for me, not as an expert, just as a regular old girly. So for the next 35 minutes, just pretend that actually know that I am not giving you advice. I am not telling you that this is what you should do. I am truly just trying to share my experience. And like I said, this is going to be more free-flowing. It's going to be a little bit more vulnerable. We might take some curves, and hopefully we get back to staying on topic. But first, we have to go back to 2023. And this is when I really first started thinking about getting off the birth control pill. That's what I was on. I was on a birth control pill because, frankly, I didn't love the idea of, as I started to learn more about hormones and more about female health in general. I just didn't love the idea of synthetic hormones being pumped into my body anymore. Not that there was anything wrong with it. I just truly wanted to learn a little bit more about my body. And there are some really good benefits to having regular hormone monthly fluctuations. And I wanted to experience those benefits too. But at the same time, like I had mentioned, I had heard horror stories about it taking women years to get their period back. And Michael and I were getting married in 2023. And I knew that at some point in the next 5 years, we wanted kids. And after hearing all of these horror stories, I was like, I should start this process early. Like, I should get off birth control way before we want to try to have kids so that I can get ahead of this. Because what if it takes me like 2 years to get my period back and I have to follow all these like protocols and I have to do all these special things? So like, I need to start getting on this. But at the same time, we were getting married in 2023 and I just didn't want to have to deal with that. I didn't want to have to, I had been on birth control since I was 16, and I just didn't want to have to deal with the potential changes to my body right before my wedding. So I kind of said in 2024, that's the time that I'm going to figure this out. Again, not because we wanted to have kids right away, but because I thought it was going to like take some time. So I like set that goal of 2024. So in 2023, like really towards the end of it, after we got married, after we had like a crazy travel season, I started reading this book to kind of start to develop my own knowledge a little bit deeper about, the women's menstrual cycle, what I could expect, how to properly get off the pill, hormone fluctuations. The book's called The Women's Guide to Hormonal Harmony, which it has some really helpful information in it around hormone health in general. So if this is something you're interested in, I would, recommend reading that book. And I was feeling like excited to start to bring my body to more of this natural state. But at the same time, I was feeling really nervous because, like I said, I had been on birth control since I was 16, 17 years old. And the reason I initially went on birth control is because I started to get my period every other week. Like every other week, I was getting my period. And my doctor's fix was to just go on birth control to regulate my cycle. And at 16, at 17, I didn't, honestly, until the last like 5 years, I didn't know that maybe that wasn't the best option. I didn't know that there were even other options. I was just doing what my doctor told me to do. So I went on birth control. It worked. I have always had a very positive experience on birth control. I, don't have like a ton of acne. I never had like mood swings from it. It's really easy for me to remember to take the pill. Like it all was just so easy. So I never thought to change it. But now, we're in 2024 still, as I was getting ready to go off of it, I started to have all of this fear. Like, what if when I was 16, when I was 17, I had this deeper hormonal issue that was undetected because they were just putting a Band-Aid fix of birth control on it? What if it's going to take me years to get my period back? And on top of that, I was seeing all of these stories of women who, when they go off birth control, they were gaining a ton of weight. They had terrible hormonal acne. They were just dealing with a lot of really negative symptoms for years and years. And after 15 years of my body being very regulated, not having many changes after I got through that yo-yo diet phase in my early 20s, that felt scary to me. It felt scary to feel like I was out of control of my body. And so on January 1st, literally January 1st, 2024, I had the worst panic attack I have ever had. And I have generalized anxiety. I have for most of my adult life. It is typically very, very manageable. I go to therapy for it. I feel like it doesn't impact my day-to-day life at all. And I had panic attacks in the past before I quit my corporate job, but it was nothing like this. And our bodies are wild. It's not a coincidence that on January 1st of the year that I said I would get off birth control, I had a panic attack. And I'm talking like heart pounding out of my chest in a way it never had before. I was genuinely concerned for my health because I had never experienced any of that. And I'll never forget, I immediately tried calling Michael. He was fishing for the day because it was literally New Year's Day. I was working. Most people were not. I tried calling Michael, but he was fishing for the day and he had like just gotten out of service. So he's not picking up. I was home alone. Like I said, I was working, and I called my mom because I thought something was seriously wrong with me. Like I was like, I need to go to the hospital. And I, in the back of my mind, because I have anxiety in general, and because I had experience, with something similar in the past, I was, aware of the fact that it might have been anxiety related. So I was able to like talk to my mom, calm down, recognize that I wasn't having like a heart attack or anything more serious, luckily. And it was just anxiety. But how crazy, right? That January 1st, the year I said I was going to get off birth control, I start the year with the worst panic attack of my life. And I feel like I should pause because I said that going off birth control was a positive experience for me at the start of the podcast, and now I'm painting it out to be really negative. I promise this ends with a happy ending. But unfortunately, my anxiety skyrocketed from there. I started having regular feelings of panic, and it was a lot of the times it was like in situations that I felt like I couldn't get out of. So like getting really panicky when I was driving, when I was like coaching classes, when I was home alone, just any time I felt like I, maybe was stuck wherever I was, on planes. It was just not super fun. And like I said, I have generalized anxiety, but it is so manageable at this point. Doesn't usually impact me day to day. I have a lot of coping skills. I've, had points in my life where my anxiety has been heightened before. Like last time it was higher was when I quit my full-time corporate job. But it had never been this bad before. It had never felt this scary in the moment before. And it finally got to a point where I asked my therapist, I was like, what is going on here? Should I be going on like medication? Like what is happening? And I really realized that a lot of these feelings of anxiety were coming from what felt like a possible loss of control of my body. And I will be honest that there were some other layers to this too, that I'm not going to get into on this podcast because it doesn't specifically relate to getting off of birth control. If you want me to do another podcast on, my anxiety journey and what kind of happened these 6 months when my anxiety was, definitely much higher, I'm happy to share more of that. If that's something you guys are interested in learning about, shoot me a DM, let me know. I can do like another podcast episode on it. But for this episode, we will focus on the anxiety that was like more coming from getting off of birth control. And like I said, I had been on birth control for 15 years. I knew what my body was like on birth control. I was in a really comfortable place. I had been maintaining my weight for like 8 years, never had to think about it. Like you guys know, I talk about it all the time. I don't think about food. I know how to properly fuel my body. I know what I should eat every day in order to keep my body composition the same. I love the workouts I do. I feel really good. Like my skin was great. I knew that 99% of the time I would wake up in the morning and I would feel really good. And because I was seeing all of these horror stories on social media from these women saying that they like lost full control of their body when they went off hormonal birth control and they gained a ton of weight and they couldn't explain it and their skin was like out of control, I was really nervous to make this change. It felt like a big, scary change to not be in control of a body that I hadn't been thinking much about for the last 15 years. I guess I should say the last 8 years once I, went through my own health and fitness journey. And on top of that, 2024 was a really busy year for us. So we had a ton of weddings. We had multiple family trips. We had a trip to Italy for a wedding. I had a lot going on in my business, and I felt like on top of that, how would I also deal with changes in my body? Selfishly, I felt like I didn't have time. I felt like it was like one more thing that I didn't have to worry about. Like I didn't like unexplained weight gain, horrible skin, while also dealing with a lot of travel. It just felt like a lot. So because of that, I chose to press pause on going off birth control and work through some of those bigger things and just kind of keep things the same. So, through therapy, I started to work through, some of those like deeper anxiety things and try to feel like I had more control. I guess I'm really oversimplifying what I was working through in therapy. But basically I just chose to press pause on the birth control thing until I felt like there was some stability in some of the other stuff that I was working through, because I was like, I can't also worry about my body on top of this. And I hate to say that because I don't want that to sound negative, because if I had gained weight, it wouldn't have been a big deal. I know how to lose weight. I think it was that I had heard so many messages that people were just feeling so out of control that and again, this sounds negative, but I just didn't want to deal with it. I was so used to my health and fitness and body feeling so easy that I didn't want to add in another element. And you guys can honestly probably relate to that. That's why trying a new health and fitness routine feels so scary, because even if you don't like where you're at least you have the comfort of staying the same. And that's kind of how I was. Like, I didn't love the idea of having these synthetic hormones in my body, but at least I had the comfort of knowing what to expect from my body for the next 8 months. And like I said, you probably feel that same way maybe about like fat loss or whatever it is that you're working through on your health and fitness journey. You don't want to try something new because if you keep doing what you're doing, you know what to expect. Even if it's not necessarily a positive thing, you at least know what the next 8 months are going to look like. Versus if you try something new, maybe you try a new fat loss method, maybe you switch from really cardio-based things to strength training, you don't know for sure what that's going to look like. So it feels really scary. But as we know, avoiding discomfort and not trying the new thing is actually a version of self-sabotage. In this instance, I would not say I was self-sabotaging. I had talked with my therapist about, pressing pause on this birth control thing. That was the right move for me. But I would just encourage you to think about, are you trying to stay the same because you're avoiding discomfort? And are we self-sabotaging? So that was really all of this happened. The big anxiety attack, the decision to kind of press pause, I'm moving off birth control. That was in January, and probably in May, June, July, I started to feel a lot more like myself. After working through those things in therapy, I was having way less feelings of panic. I was just feeling much more like myself again. But I still did have a lot of those fears around getting off birth control. And like I had said, we had a lot of travel over the summer. And one thing I did know about when I went off the pill is that I wanted to have a really strong foundation. I wanted to make sure that I was properly fueling my body. I wanted to make sure that I was eating enough. I wanted to make sure that my stress was in a good spot, because all of that stuff does really matter when we are regulating our hormones. So I knew that maybe during a really busy travel time, also trying to get off birth control, probably not the best time to do so. So I set this like new goal of January 2025. So basically press pause for a full year, said 2025, I'm going to get back to this. And guess what, you guys? By the time January rolled around, so literally 2 months ago, I was feeling really confident and secure about going off birth control. Therapy is amazing. After working through some of my concerns and fears in therapy, I was feeling really good and excited again about going off birth control. And you know what? I was freaking out over nothing. This is my personal experience. I am not saying that this is how your experience will be. There are a lot of, factors when we talk about hormone health. It can be very individual, but my period came back the very first month, and I have noticed very, very minimal changes to my body, my mood, and literally everything I was concerned about. Now, again, I do want to give myself credit because I think a big reason the transition has been so easy is because of the strong foundation that I already had with my health. I eat enough calories. I'm not trying to do this in a calorie deficit. We know that eating enough can be really helpful for hormone health. I properly fuel my body too. I get a really good mix of macro and micronutrients. I get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. My stress is in a place where it is very manageable. And hormonal birth control depletes a lot of our nutrients, including things like magnesium, B vitamins, zinc. So in addition to making sure that I was eating a lot of whole foods to support this nutrient depletion, I also started taking a really high quality multivitamin that focused around some of those things that hormonal birth control tends to deplete. I used Legion's just general women's multivitamin. You could also supplement for what you think you are depleted in. If you are thinking about supplementation at all, talk to your doctor, get some lab work done, see what you're deficient in. I just chose to go with a general, really high quality supplementation. So those are really the things though that I focused on. I didn't follow like any crazy protocol or do anything out of my normal routine. I just made sure to really stick to the solid health and fitness foundations that I've been working really hard on over the last 8 years. And because of that, I have noticed very minimal changes. And it's been very easy to make this transition. I do want to touch on some changes that I did notice just in the spirit of transparency. I noticed a actually positive impact on my anxiety, but also like my creativity and my energy. Again, when you're on birth control, you're not having a natural period cycle, so you're not actually getting those monthly fluctuations in hormone. So now it is pretty cool, depending on where I'm at in my cycle, I can feel the shift in hormones, but in a positive way as opposed to a negative way. So I'm not having these like really deep, tough emotions during my luteal phase. It's more so that I'm noticing I have more heightened positive emotions, in other phases of my cycle. So I would say positive impact on, I'm also having like less anxiety, but again, I think that's just related to a lot of the work I've been doing this past year, but something to note too. I will say I was pretty emotional the first 3-ish weeks. I used to say I'm not an emotional person. I would not say that anymore. I do tend to get kind of emotional, but I don't like cry a lot, and I would be like crying at dog TikToks randomly, just at night, anytime they popped up. So the first like 3-ish weeks. So definitely was feeling some hormonal fluctuations there, but that's really evened out for me and not experiencing that anymore. I will say my skin is a little bit more sensitive and I definitely have more texture, but I'm not having like terrible breakouts or painful acne or anything like that. It's something that I notice just because I look at myself every day and I can see myself like being on like the verge of a breakout, I would say more frequently. But, for example, like Michael has not noticed a single thing. So I don't think it's like super noticeable, these changes in my skin. I also think that some of these skin changes will take longer than 3 months to even out. So I'll keep you guys posted on that if you're interested. Another change is my cycle is on the shorter side. It's still considered a regular period. It's just on, the average length of a period is like 29 days. Mine is closer to that 22 to 25 range right now. Again, this might change the longer I'm off hormonal birth control, but I'm not worried about it. It's still considered a shorter cycle. It's just kind of annoying because it means I get my period more frequently, but truly not a big deal. Just part of being a woman. Other than that though, you guys, I have felt very normal, very much like myself. And again, of course, like if any of this changes, I'll keep you guys posted, but I really just wanted to give you some hope that if you're thinking about getting off of birth control, it doesn't have to be this big, scary transition. And of course, sometimes there are deeper hormonal issues. And when you're experiencing those, I would recommend reaching out to a specialist if that's something you're struggling with. But I just want to give you some hope compared to the usual stories out there that it doesn't have to be a scary transition. It doesn't have to be this terrible experience. And it can actually be a positive. So if you're thinking about, going off of the pill or, going off of hormonal birth control in general, you're not sure where to start, please feel free to shoot me a DM. Like I said, I'm just sharing my personal experience. I am not a functional health coach. I am not an endocrinologist. This is not my specialty. I am just a girly sharing my personal experience with you guys. But if you found this episode helpful, it would be great to hear from you guys. Like I said, it's a little bit more vulnerable to share things that I'm still going through as opposed to things that I have very much overcome. But really, the transition off the pill can be super seamless if you're setting your body up to support the transition in the first place. So focusing on proper nutrition, stress management, sleep, and proper supplementation when needed can be really, really helpful. Again, I would so appreciate hearing from you guys if this episode was helpful, interesting. If you like some of these personal stories, let me know, because it's just a little bit different from the typical episodes I do. And don't forget, I pick one person every single month who leaves a review or shares this episode in their stories to win a free health and fitness audit from me every single month. So please consider sharing this, leaving a review. It helps the podcast grow a ton. But in general, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for being my rock, my support system. It really means so much to me. And I will see all of you next week.